Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta or Sacred Garden Yoga if you're watching this on Sacred Garden Yoga. I am joined here with my friend Cindy from Sacred Garden Yoga. How you doing today, Cindy?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. Haven't been on a channel in a long time. We were just talking about that beforehand, so it's fun to be back.
You got stuff going on in your lives. You've got your life to live, so it's totally understandable. And but I'm really excited. We've actually been talking about doing this video for a while now, and it just scheduling just kept messing up, and finally we're able to sit down and talk about this really, to me, a very fascinating subject. I know to some people probably not, but I'm a nerd, and I think you are too, Cindy, when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I posted up on my community tab on YouTube asking for questions regarding exercise, spirituality, Mulabunda, all these things that I've been talking about that Cindy talks about in her classes. And we got a few questions, and we're going to make you wait till the end because we're going to answer them for you, but you're going to have to wait till the end of the video to hear the answer to these questions that we got. But before we get started, I wanted to start with, Cindy, you and I don't mean to be rude, but you and I have been like textbook weirdos since the day we were probably born. Like, we were into spirituality before it was cool to be into spirituality, weren't we?
Totally. Yes.
We're OGs.
Before it was cool.
Before there was the Instagrams and all that stuff. And
back when I was looking through yellow pages, looking for a yoga video. Like, that's how long ago it was.
Yep. Yep. My boyfriend, the same thing. He had to find a recommendation for India, and he had to go through the yellow pages to find Tim Miller out in California, and had to like call him up. And so yeah, it's you had to go on a scavenger hunt to get what you needed in order to find what you're looking for. And I think sometimes I call it pop spirituality now that we have the internet now, which is great in a lot of ways. We can do this, we can talk about this, we can advertise our businesses, we can get this information out faster and quicker. But the flip side, we have a lot of like fake spirituality. We have a lot of what I call pop spirituality that really isn't founded on any foundation of lineage. And the beautiful thing about lineage when it comes to understanding spirituality is that you have these years of information of trial and error where people have really done the work to understand what it is we talk about when we're talking about spirituality. And the one thing I think people oftentimes get confused about when you're talking about having a spiritual practice, first and foremost, you're talking about working on your own spirit, right? I think people want to skip all the way to like channeling, which is fun. Tarot cards are fun, but they forget that first you've got to actually know your own spirit first before you can actually venture outside of yourself. And we see people wanting to like open their third eye, but yet they're totally not even aware of Muladhara and Mulabunda. And it's like without Muladhara or Mulabunda, it's like the foundation of a house. Without a good foundation, the house is going to fall. And so that's what I kind of wanted to focus on with you today, Cindy, because it's just so important. And it is so important for anybody going on the spiritual path to not avoid the hard stuff, because the Mulabundas, the lower chakras, well, Bundas are a lock, but like Muladhara all the way to Manipura, these lower, like the hell of the body, that's the real tricky stuff, isn't it?
Well, it's in those lower three chakras where your humanity lies, like your true humanity, like those the primal aspects of you that make you very human. And yeah, that's where all the gnarly stuff is. And it is much easier to want to just bypass your spiritual bypass all that and go directly up to here. Like, let me just skip all that. Let's go to the heart, or let's go to here, or let's go to here.
Yeah.
This one's a gnarly one too, actually, the throat chakra. But we automatically want to skip what makes us human and go straight to the element of the spirit, what the matter. The part of us, we talk about in yoga, in the class about oftentimes is the unity of your spirit and matter. It's embodied spirit or spiritualizing your body. But to have to come down and to descend into what makes you human and all the feelings and emotions. And you're talking about Muladhara. that's where like all the abandonment issues lie, the, you know, trauma from the inner child. And I know these days it's definitely become a lot more popular to do some of that work, like, you know, some of that shadow work. But then it's interesting that you're talking about how, you know, we used to have to, back in the day, the yellow pages and stuff. And I know I sound like a total Gen Xer now. um, you know, it's like we had to go through almost like a pilgrimage. You had to have this deep hunger and this deep desire to want to know yourself and to go through the process of that and finding your teachers. I mean, it was like you did. It was like a pilgrimage that you went through because you had such a strong hunger for it. And now that the information, so you're saying it's more easily available, yes, which is a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. That means that this information is available to more people. But at the same time, it is much easier to skip through the things that, like even the yogis or the people who are on their spiritual path back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, they didn't have access to the information that they have now. But it made them have to go through the process versus now it is much easier to skip through and pick and choose what it is that you want to learn about.
Right. And we also were in this, there's this great story that the Hathors tell in the Hathor material by Tom Kenyon, because we see a lot of similarity between like old Egyptian alchemy and like yoga teachings. There's a lot of similarities, different words, pretty much the same practices. And they talk, the Hathors tell this story about they had these different schools, like beginner, intermediate, kind of more advanced, and you had to work your way up. And they tell this story about this man who out his whole life kept trying to go to the advanced school without going to the beginner or intermediate first. And they kept turning him away and said, you got to start at the beginning. And he spent his whole life trying to manipulate his way into the advanced school, which he never got in, instead of just going to the beginning. And so he didn't progress in that life. Maybe he learned his lesson, like you got to start at the beginning. And I thought that was such a great story for them to tell, because I see that a lot now where people have this, maybe it is social media, this sense of almost entitlement where they start their spiritual journey, but nobody wants to be a beginner. Right? Nobody wants to start at the beginning. To me, the beginning is the best part. The beginning is, in the beginning, there's so many possibilities. In the beginning, there's an inspiration. You know, listen, towards the end, a lot of those possibilities are gone and a lot of the inspiration's gone, and it's just hard work. You know, and we look at, you know, we always say in the Ashtanga world anyway, the easiest students to teach are the beginning students and the advanced students, because both the beginning students and the advanced students both know that they know nothing. It's the intermediate students who are difficult to teach because they think they know everything. And so I love all these stories because, again, I see that so much now where people just want to go into their third eye and they don't want to touch anything else. And, you know, there's that great book. My mind's gone completely blank now. Eastern Body, Western Mind. That's the one.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's the one that we would use in teacher training.
Yeah, that's a really great book. I recommended it. I think it's actually in my Amazon affiliate link, guys. I'll put that down below. She does a really good job explaining all the chakras in a very simplistic way that's understandable, and it's not overwhelming. You can like read one chapter, work through it, and then read the next. But I remember in her Ajna, her third eye, her sixth chakra chapter, she talked a lot about this fine line between like intuition and like delusions. And I've said that, like, if you don't have a basis in spirituality, if you don't have a basis in Mulabandha and Muladhara and these lower, if you're not constantly working on that lower belly area of your body where that spiritual elixir lies, then you run the risk of going into your imagination with your not intuition. And we're still, I mean, look at, I was just telling you offline, I've been covering Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. That's a really great example. They thought that their kids were zombies, were dark spirits, because they were intuiting it. No, they weren't. They were married to different people. They wanted to be with each other. And so they got rid of the people in their lives that were standing in the way of that. But their imagination ran wild, and now they're both paying the consequences for that. And so I wanted to really, you know, and also when we look at the physical body, when we talk about the third eye, if we just look at Sushumna and Kundalini. So Sushumna, for people who aren't aware, it's like your spine, but it's not your spine. It's where your spine is. It's like this, it's called a nadi, but it's like this tunnel that runs from the base of the pelvic floor of the body all the way up through the back of the head. The chakras run up Sushumna, and then the bandhas, which we're going to talk about, are this force that moves the Kundalini energy, or the Christ consciousness energy. I know some people are afraid of the word Kundalini, so we'll say Christ consciousness energy from the base of the pelvic floor up through the spine. And a Kundalini, like awakening, typically happens in stages. Headstand is a way to help that elixir come through the spine. But as it was described to me in India, and I want your thoughts on this too, Cindy, Kundalini is oftentimes represented by a coiled snake, a snake that's just kind of sleeping at the pelvic floor. Now, we live in my opinion, one of the hottest areas of the world because it's humid. I don't know anybody in the South that doesn't have a fan in their bedroom and air conditioning going at the same time. So everybody who's in the South or who lives in a warm area of the world knows that when you're sleeping at night and it's freaking hot outside, you don't get a good night's sleep, right? So when the Kundalini, the coiled energy, starts to get moved and interrupted and strengthen and heat, that heat starts to come into the body, the strength of the stomach, the strength of the muscles start to come in, it starts to wake up. And it starts to move, and that's when it starts to move up the spine. So you can't really have access, in my opinion, to full access to ajna without also having full access to the pelvic floor region of your body, that energetic and physical and spiritual connection to the base of your body as well, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on that, Cindy?
Yeah, I mean, the body and the Kundalini and the Muladhara, the base of the spine, and Muladhara also, to me, very much has to do with the relationship that you have with your body. And to get fully grounded in understanding that your body is actually this beautiful temple. Like, you said it houses the Sushumna from which everything has to rise up so that you can get to this level. The acceptance of the body, the relationship that you have with the body, the way that you feel about yourself, that grounding in your ability to know that you are safe to be here, that you have the right to take up room, that you have a right to be here, right? Isn't that is the right of the first chakra of your Muladhara, is that you have a right to be here. And that you have that sense of safety and security, that you have your tribe. Without that, nothing else really matters. It's like that has to come in first. Or if it doesn't, if you just go straight up to here, then there's no true essence to it. Like you said, it becomes more of a delusional space. It's not anchored in anything that's earthy, or it's not anchored in anything that's truth. Is not anchored in your ability to understand yourself as a human, because we are humans. And it's like you got to understand yourself as a human in the relationships that you're in, how you interact with other people, the foods that you, in other words, everything that's material. If you take out the material from the spiritual, then the spiritual doesn't have anything to really anchor itself into. And it becomes meaningless in your human experience, because your spiritual experience should bring more meaning, more depth to your human experience. It shouldn't take you away from your human experience. In other words, it's not a form of escapism. Right. And that's what it can become if it's not anchored into the body, anchored into how it can actually help you live a better life as a human being. If it's not helping you, have a good relationship with your body, or if your body's falling apart, or if your relationships are falling apart, or if your finances are falling apart, then this stuff hardly matters. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like this needs to help you with this. Otherwise, there's really no purpose of it. No point. That's why you were born. That's why you were incarnated, to know yourself as both human and spirit. Because we're spirit already. I mean, we're We didn't have to be born to be spirits. Spirit is who we are. We're born to be human, to be we're born to be embodied. And that is like the very Tantra. That's the philosophy of Tantra too, is to be an embodied spirit, or to spiritualize the body, to bring together both spirit and matter. And that's also the foundation of Hermeticism.
Yeah.
By the way, Hermeticism is just the Western esoteric philosophy that the Easterners, the Tantric philosophies, practice, just with a different language.
Yeah.
It's embodied spirit, or spiritualizing the body, bringing it together so that you can live the best life for yourself and for others. And it comes back to service. Like, once you are here and present and aligned with your own purpose and clarity, I mean, all these things matter. Your purpose matters. Why am I here? And those are some of the questions that get lost when you're too much in your head. You can't ground your purpose. You know what I mean? It's like your purpose never goes anywhere. It just stays up in this kind of delusional realm, and it never actually goes anywhere to be of service and to help other people.
Absolutely.
So it all has to come back to being in your body, being in relationship with others. How can I help and serve others? It has to all come round again. So it's a current that's going up and down. It's not just about being up here. It's like you take it up, you take it down. You take it up, you take it down. You're moving the current through the body. It's not just staying in one place. Then you actually feel more fulfilled in life. You feel more satisfied. You feel accomplished. You feel like you're actually making a contribution, that you're living your legacy, that you are making a difference. And those are the things that in the end actually make us feel better as a person. Versus if you're not feeling better as a person, then your spirituality really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love that.
I hope that answered the question.
I love that. That anchored, because that's, in the law of one, they talk a lot about how your soul chooses, the cause and the effect. The cause is the soul, the effect becomes the body. The soul chooses to create this experience, or the Shiva or the Shakti, it creates this experience for refinement. To have, and I know in the Emerald Tablets, one of my favorite things in the Emerald Tablet that Thoth says, let's like in the Emerald Tablet, Thoth talks about reptilians, he talks about lizard people. Like, there's some really, really saucy stuff, spicy stuff in the drama in the Emerald Tablets. But the thing that I found most fascinating, probably because of my years of work, was when he said, you only know life because you know death. When you're in spiritual form, when you're without body, there's no creation, because there's no understanding of life, because there's no death. And that really hit home, because that is what the purpose of the body is, to have that nervous system, is to have the cause and effect, the karma, the friction of being human, to have the shadow work, to have to go back and navigate through that, because that's what creates the refinement of the soul in the end. But when you're ignoring the body, or when you've created this like mental gymnastics, I've heard a lot of people say this, well, I'm a spiritual person, so therefore I don't pay attention to my body. Well, then you're not a spiritual person, because you look at India, all the great yogis of India they're all very in their bodies, right? How else do you think they're levitating? They can only levitate their body because they're in their body, right? Or I see this a lot. Now, I believe fully in past lives. I think most people actually do. But I know we pull karma over from past lives, but I find a lot that people get so obsessed with past lives and living there then, that they forget to be here now. And it's like, no, don't use that as a disassociation from the sensation of the now, because you're not there. You're not there then. You're now. Now you have to process this in this body. And I've said a lot, Cindy, too, and I want to clarify this as well. So the bandhas, for people who are new, so most people know what the chakras are, but just if you don't know, it's 7 points in the body that represent different energetic cycles that cycle through. But a lot of people are not familiar, surprisingly, or have no clue what the bandhas are. But in my opinion, Cindy, the chakras cannot exist without the bandhas, and the bandhas cannot exist really without the chakras. They make each other kind of move. And so I would describe the bandhas. You have three ones that you're working with. Jalandhara is in your throat, it's tucking your chin in. Uddiyana is in your belly button, it's pulling the belly button up and back, so the energy is coming up the spine. And then Muladhara, or Mula Bandha rather, is the Mac Daddy to me, because it's the most interesting. It's basically in your crotch. It's in your perineum. And it's this lock. It's a lock of the perineum. It's a lock of the belly button. So if we're talking about that Kundalini energy rising up, what's pulling it up is actually that perineum pulling up into that strength, basically in your crotch, right? Do you have anything you want to add to that, Cindy, about for people understanding what these bandhas are?
Yeah, it's like you said, it helps to pull, it's an upward, Uddiyana actually means upward moving, so it helps to pull the prana upward. And the interesting thing about Muladhara, you're talking about the pelvic floor, is that the pelvic floor, like that, the actual physical pelvic floor, is such an interesting area, because to get Mula Bandha going, to get it going effectively, you know, we do hold the tension. There's some people that hold tremendous amount of tension in their pelvic floor. Yeah. And usually the tension that's held in the pelvic floor is unconscious tension. And this is, you know, now going back to the energetics of what your chakras represents, and the Muladhara, which is your base chakra, your root chakra. You know, again, your right to be here, your safety, it feeds down into the legs, into the hips, into the pelvic floor. But how unconscious tension gets caught up in the pelvic floor, you don't even realize how much we're like over pulling up, but then it's done in an unconscious way. And then it's just like this gripping, this tension that's coming from, you know, some kind of fear or protection. And to get good Mula Bandha, it's almost like you have to release the held tension first. It's like the first process is becoming aware of your pelvic floor, which is a weird thing to become aware of in the first place. It's like you got to take your mind's eye to the pelvic floor, and then starting to do the work of undoing the unconscious tension that's there, that's the gripping, the holding, the fear patterns, the shame or the guilt or whatever, you know, we clench in the pelvic floor. It's like you got to undo that first, and then redo the Mula Bandha to where it's conscious upliftment, like a conscious upliftment, a conscious connection that you're making with that area, for it to have the proper effect of the rising of the Kundalini. Whereas which is why, you know, the yoga is so important, where you're doing all of the movement first, like the hip work, and anything else that you do, even the core work that you do when you're pulling up through the belly, and everything that you're doing to bring you awareness to how that's holding within your body, and to notice if there is like this gnarly gripping that's going on there, and getting the movement to undo that first, so that the Mula Bandha can be truly effective in creating that upliftment of the prana or the shakti or the chi or whatever you want to call it through the body.
The crotch punch, as I call it. It's that control. It's that taking your power back. And that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't want to talk about that, because I remember, and for those watching, like, I want to make this clear too, because I think sometimes, I know I forget to say this, as long as you're alive and breathing, this is something you're forever going to be working on. There's no like finish line. It's constantly rediscovering and re-experimenting with this. And so I remember years ago, before I'd ever went to India, I was doing a pranayama class with David Greek, my original Ashtanga teacher, and pranayama is a bitch. Like, if the proper, like, I mean, I think I've seen the light of God in a more stressed out state. I've seen the light like of death in pranayama class way more than I've seen in asana class. But he had us like in the Jalandhara Bandha, guys, and pranayama is the extension of life force. It's the breathing that also generates that as well, the same type of sensation. And that's when you're using a lot of the Jalandhara Bandha too, when you're tucking in to open up the back of the throat. And he had us like with the exhale, try to bring the exhale as low as we could into our pelvic floor. I couldn't do it. I couldn't even get my mind to go there. And that's when I realized how much trauma was there. And it's not, I think it's every culture. I think every culture, I can't name one culture in the world that doesn't have some level of conservativeness or taboo-ness around this area of the body for both men and women. And it took me a really long time to first understand it, that there was something there that I was missing. When I was up in Philadelphia, we'll get into the physicality of it, but at one point, David was like, "You're not even using your legs. Like, you're going through your whole practice just using your arms." And so he would have me do my practice up against the wall, pressing my feet against the wall to get my legs, which we'll talk about in a minute. We'll talk about what the legs have to do with it. Just to get and then all of a sudden things started shifting in my practice, and things got easier because all of a sudden, just in a very practical sense, my legs were actually doing stuff now. But we'll talk about that soon. But then in 2016, I know I've told this story before, I broke my sacrum. And I had a choice to make. I could either throw a pity party and quit, or I could reevaluate how I did things. And that's when I found, Cindy suggested it, ballet, my friend Chris up in Canada suggested bar class. And it took me a while to find the teacher that I really liked. But when I started to do this work that's a little bit different from yoga, it's got the same purpose, in my opinion, I was like, oh my God, there it is. And it took that restructuring of the same concept, and then it totally shifted my practice again. That breaking my sacrum was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because it absolutely, I was laughing at 41. I've said it at Sacred Garden. When I can get my boyfriend to adjust me, normally he won't, but when I can get him to, he always makes comments about how my body feels very different than it did at 31. Right? Because I have more awareness of that.
Well, that's what an injury does that too. I mean, injury basically is on some level, it's just designed to redirect you.
Yep.
Injury is not always there to, be a pain in the ass, although it is, but it's just telling you that something needs to be redirected. Yeah. And that's exactly what you did. You had an injury. Again, you could have used it as an excuse to whatever, but you redirected you just knew that something had to be redirected. And once you realign yourself to where that's going, then that's where all the difference happens, where the change happens, where the shift happens.
Everything opens up.
Yeah.
Everything got that, my core got stronger. And so and again, you guys, like when we're talking about, and my mom's family, they're from the coast of South Carolina. And whenever I talk about like the foundation of Muladhara, I always get this image in my head. Houses on the coast of South Carolina or Florida, a lot of the Atlantic coast, because the Atlantic is a very sassy ocean. It's a very sassy ocean. It's very powerful, right? And they're all built. You see these mansions up on stilts, and the stilts are there for like high tide, for really rough weather, so that doesn't knock the house down. Now, growing up there, that's just what I'm used to. But as I got older and I'd bring friends, or boyfriends would come to South, they would always be weirded out by the fact that these mansions were like up on these stilts. Like, how are these stilts holding up this house? Well, it's because the foundation of the stilts is sturdy enough so that when the high tide comes, now sometimes the hurricanes might take the roof off, but those stilts are still standing strong. And that's what I think of with Mulabunda, also like the root of a tree. When a tree is firmly rooted in the earth, the wind can come and it will move with the wind, but it rarely gets uprooted. It has to be a pretty gnarly thing for it to get uprooted. And that's Mulabunda. And I guess we could kind of get into the physicality, because this is not, and I'll use, because you're a dancer too, Cindy. One thing too I'll say about, I love all the fancy Sanskrit words. I think they sound witchy and cool, but sometimes it's better to explain these things from a very practical perspective, because almost every athlete out there is using Mulabunda, as well as dancers.
What I often say, when you start to get into the physical body and steadiness, so you're talking about, finding that steadiness first, and with the steady, the rest of your body can sway and move. Something that I often say just to clients that I'm working with, or to students, is it's where you want to redirect your safety, because there's a part of us that is in protective mode. But what happens is sometimes we direct the energy of safety and protection, And the way I see her, the way I feel it, especially when working with different bodies, through the work that I do, is that sense of protection and safety is just in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, your heart will often put in this a sense of safety, like in the heart area, but the heart isn't really where safety belongs. You know what I mean? Like, your heart is a place. It's very opposite of that, actually. The heart is vulnerable. The heart is open. It's reciprocity. It's where the line of giving and receiving come out through the heart. And this is not where safety goes. This is not where protection goes. It shouldn't be here. If it does, it closes off the heart. But instead, where can you redirect the safety to where it's actually going to provide your body what it needs to be more open and free, but yet steady? You redirect the safety down into your legs, your butt, I mean, think about the muscles that you have. You have a tremendous amount of muscles in the legs because, they have to move those big bones around. But think about the size of the muscles in your quads, the size of your muscles, the size of your muscles in your quadriceps, the size of your glutes, your hamstring, your calves. They can take the anchor, they can take the safety. So if you want to feel safe, take it out of here. Take it out of here. Let this be open and free and more fluid, and put the safety down where it belongs. Move it down into the legs. Now, that's going to require you, probably when you're doing the work, to move through. We're talking about some of the trauma that kept you from anchoring in the first place. So, part of that work is also recognizing, or at least there's another unconscious belief that a lot of us have, we don't realize, is that we don't feel like our bodies is a safe place to inhabit. And so we directly go out of body because, maybe we, in our younger lives, we had, some traumatic experiences. And what we did to help get us through, to cope, is to disassociate, is to come out of the body. And then somewhere within the languaging of our minds, we decided that our body was not a safe place to inhabit. So it's first, making peace with the body, that this is what you've been given, and you can't, it was given to you from your first breath, and you're going to take it with you until the last breath. You really can't escape your body no matter what you do. You can try to, but, coming to peace with the fact that your body's here for you. Your body's not against you. It's here for you, and making it a safe place again. Yeah. And then bringing that safety back down, anchoring that safety and bringing it down into the legs and down into your butt and down into your hips, and anchoring it and giving that firmness and that structure and those stilts that you were talking about, down to where it's supposed to go, to where it needs to go, because the lower part of our body can handle that. It can take that.
It can take a hit,
and then the rest of you can be more free. But it all begins with the relationship that you do have with the body. Does it feel like a safe place for you to inhabit? Can you move that safety down into where it's supposed to, where it belongs within your body? And then it helps to clear up everything else.
And I've done body videos on body morphic disorder, which I've struggled with. I love you're saying this too, because maybe for me, it's also getting older as well, but I've been that sick kid. I was sick a lot growing up. I've hated my body. I've been mean to my body. But when, and that existed through a lot of my Ashtanga practice too. Oddly enough, there's a lot of Ashtanga people who have disordered eating. You see that a lot. But again, when it came back to that, I was 33 years old, 2016, broke my sacrum. When I started to really incorporate the bar, which was actually incorporating more Mulabandha work, what started off just to strengthen my sacrum back, now at 41 years old, I freaking love my body. I feel sexy. Mm-hmm. I love what it's been through. I love all my scars on my body because I earned those suckers. I look at my legs, and I say this in class sometimes, the femur bone specifically. The femur bone is the strongest bone in your body, and it takes a lot. If you break your femur bone, I want to hear the story, because you probably skied into a tree or something, or were hit by a Mack truck, because it takes a lot to break the femur bone, the thigh bone, the quadriceps, and the inner thigh, which a lot of the work that we do with Mullabanda involves the inner thigh, which we'll get to. Sometimes the quadriceps, because they're so big, they'll take over from the inner thigh. But that inner thigh, that's where all that magic. But these beautiful quadriceps, they're so willing to help, And so that shifted in me. It wasn't a goal I had. Literally, when I started doing this other work, it was just to strengthen my sacrum again so I could get back on my mat. Right? That was all it was. But it turned out that everything in my life shifted. And it's not, as I was saying, this Mullabanda work that we do can be done in so many different forms of exercise. Because in my opinion, even though I practice Ashtanga yoga, which is one of the most dogmatic yoga practices, I really think that this work can be found in any form of movement. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Cindy, but like we see it in dance, we see it in long distance runners, we see it in football players, we see it in all sorts of different movements. So there can be spirituality like this and everything involving the movement of the body. Correct? Would you say?
Well, it's in your anatomy. It's built into your anatomy period. So it says built into the physical body, the possibilities to access that kind of power. It's built into anybody's anatomy system. And it just depends on what kind of languaging you use, So it just depends on so people who are very much into sports, they're saying a lot of the same things, but they're just using more anatomical language, or dancers in the same way. I mean, they have to use their inner thigh, they have to use Mullabanda, but they're not calling it that, because there's no way you can do those. Even basketball players, the ones that do those tremendous leaps, the dancers that leap, that comes from that upward, that learning how to access that upward movement to give you lightness. And the muscles and all the deep internal work to give you that lift, they might not, call it Mullabanda or call it, anything spiritual. But what's happening, regardless of the language, is they're connected to their purpose.
Yeah.
They're connected to their passion. They're connected to their body. And they might not, to flow, and they might not call it a spiritual thing, just different languaging. But in the end, again, that's going back to what we were saying at the beginning, it's all about tapping into that legacy and serving and feeling like you're on purpose. A basketball player or a football player or a ballerina, again, they'll just use different language. Like if you hear like the ballerinas and the ones that are in their power with it, they use their own power words. They'll tell you, there's nothing else that I would rather be doing. Mm-hmm. This is my passion. I feel like, I could do this for hours and days, and they're aligned with their purpose. And in the end, that's what spirituality is about. It's not just about whatever, all this, fantasy talk. It's about you living your legacy, like living your purpose and aligning yourself with that. And the people who have connection with that type of power within their body, they're doing that automatically, like Olympic swimmers, Olympic medalists.
They
are automatically connected to their legacy, to their purpose, to their passion, to their connection with life and why I'm here. They're connected to that.
They're being alive. My friend Jamie Saleh, who's an Olympic figure skater, I've often thought, like when we look at, and I love how like that taking off, but in order, even in all sports, in order to physically jump up and do the layup or whatever, they have to go down first. It's a literal going down. It's not just coming up, and I think about my friend Jamie Saleh, who did couples, the gold medalist, and to be able to be thrown up into the air by her partner with these heavy skates on, twirl and land, that's Mullabanda. That's strong. We see when the ballerina like leaps across the stage, it makes it look easy. And if you have a still shot of a ballerina in that moment, every single muscle in his or her body are engaged. You can see the muscles engaged because they're alive and they're moving in that. And then when they land softly because that's that control, right? It's not a thump. And we say that a lot in Ashtanga, like with the jump backs and the jump throughs. If you thunk with a jump back, then you've lost Mulabandha because there needs to be that control. And you're right, because when I started doing these bar classes, they don't call it Mulabandha. That's not what they're calling it. But I knew that's what it was because I had been studying this. And I was like, oh, wow, this is what they're doing it. They're not calling it. They're calling it pelvic tucks. They're calling it, but this is Mulabandha. That's what this is. So again,
it's like accessing. Yeah. And I was going to say, this is that accessing to your place of personal power, where in the end, what it provides you on all the levels, it's beyond just physical. It's like you are connected at that moment to something bigger. Yeah. Whatever you want to call it, because it is all about, going back to the anatomy, it's about that physical alignment and being able to channel and take in and receive, not only receive, but then to what's the word I'm looking for? It's like you receive the information, but then you recode it or you redistribute it to make it do what you want it to do.
You're manipulating it in a positive way. Like you're in control. You are the alchemist. You are the sorcerer. You're able to take that energy and,
but you have to get yourself in alignment to it first. Align it through the body, through the Mulabandha, through whatever to receive it. And then once you receive it, you decode it or whatever to get it to do what you want it to do, whether it's again a ballet dancer, or if you're just cooking, or if you're a musician, or whatever it is. But it's the whole purpose of it is to get you in that alignment of being receptive and receiving, and then learning what to do with it. And some people just do that or I don't know if they naturally. I mean, some of them might have it naturally. Some of them put a lot of practice into it, like, any musician or Olympic medalist, they put a lot of practice into it. And just like we put practice into it, it's, they might not call it a spiritual practice, but in our language, it totally is a spiritual practice.
Totally.
Because you're learning how to be in flow with life. That is spiritual practice altogether, is learning how to be in flow with life and then using that life to, to manifest and do what you want to do, to live.
And that's
so there's some people that do that without the spiritual talk.
Well, that kind of brings us full circle back to the beginning too, because like that dancer that's leaping across the stage, or that basketball player, and musicians too. I mean, you watch like piano players like your son, they're using their feet to control the pedals, the whole body. You watch their body is controlled and it's moving with the flow of the music. A drummer is a good example. Yes. You watch a drummer's body, they're constantly pulling up. And that's why most of them are very got a six pack, right? Because they're constantly like pulling up. And that's that moment, like we talked about in the beginning, like a lot of times in this pop spirituality, people want to leave the experience of the body. They want to get out of the experience of the body. But in these moments of being that drummer, or being that swimmer, or being that piano player, that dancer, you're in that moment of being alive, right? Everything else has left.
It has to go through the body. Your body is actually the
conduit.
The instrument, yes, the conduit, exactly. It's the conduit from which the artistry can come through.
Yeah.
And people understand it, like the ones who are living life that way, they understand that even if they don't talk about it, is like they have a visceral understanding that this has to come through my body. Like this artistry needs to come through. And so therefore, they naturally understand their body as the conduit for life. And that in essence is the root, a lot of the, not just the root, but then you're going into the second chakra too, especially when you
I was going to say
the creativity of it.
Absolute and the third, the power, which brings, we'll get to that too. I'm glad you brought that up. But even like, you're right. Cause like your son, when he plays the piano, he doesn't just sit down and just point out notes. No, he fixed, like we come to Samastiti, he has to set his body up, set his feet up. His whole body becomes, if you watch a pianist, their arm muscles move, they're sitting up, they're not slouching, they're sitting up. My grandmother, though, used to tell a story when she would play the piano. She'd get quarters put on her knuckles. Her aunt taught her mean aunt, that she used to say. And if the quarters fall off, she'd get whacked with the ruler. But the body is totally, you watch. I mean, one of my favorite bands to watch, old bands to watch, is AC/DC. Because that guitarist, like, he is one with his guitar, and it is a physical.
Yeah.
Physical.
They're channeling.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't realize it, but it's like they're like channeling, something bigger than themselves.
Maybe that's why it's easier for them, because they take away the expectation of spirituality. They're just doing it.
Exactly.
It's good enough for rock and roll. They just do it. The dancer just dances. Right? I think sometimes that's funny. I say maybe we overthink it as yoga, because the second sutra is yoga chitta nirodha, which Patanjali is literally like you're overthinking. So maybe that's why they have such a higher rate of success, is because they don't overthink it. They just do it. And
they're just being it. They understand their practice is understanding their instruments, whether it's the body or whatever instrument, and they have usually a very specific goal in mind. And, when you have a very specific goal in mind, that's the yoga part of focusing the mind. Because in your mind, it is distracted by all these other things. It's very focused. And that's what the whole third part of the third chapter of the Yoga Sutras is about. I mean, they talk about, you focus everything and you can pretty much become an expert at anything. Yeah, like you have the capacity to hone it in on any superpower that you want if you focus your mind. And that's what these artists or these people that you're just in awe of, that's what they can do. They have their natural, they have the capacity. I'm not saying that all natural, because they trained themselves. They have a goal. It's like they very much focus their attention on, this is who I want to be and this is what I want to do. And they take every single bit of that attention, of that life, and focus it through for it to come out.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
It's not just like spiritual talk. And I think maybe that we can, overthink it, maybe overly spiritualize it, when it's really just living life to your fullest. Is what it comes down to.
Maybe Nike has it all summed up. Just do it. Like, just do it. And you guys, if you've not read the Yoga Sutras, the third and fourth pada are wild. They're fun. The first two, he's like, you suffer because X, Y, Z. Now do this, do that. Now let's talk about the cities. Let's talk about the fun. But it is, but you need the first two padas to learn how to incorporate that in order to get to that place of total. And that's what Guruji used to say. We say, oh, yoga is yoking and joining all these things, but Guruji used to say, it's just focus. All yoga is focus. It's focused attention. And one thing about, now you guys, I'm sure some of you are aware, I've just now started, I literally learned so much from my experience. What I thought was just going to be something I was going to do for a short amount of time to get my practice back has turned out to be a practice that's so freaking important to me, because it's changed my life just as much as Ashtanga has changed my life. And I started to incorporate this stuff into, like, when we would have a moon day, because we don't teach Ashtanga on moon days. And so if by chance I was scheduled and it was a moon day, we would do some of these practices in the class with Cindy and everybody else, because I thought, this is just so good. I need to share this. And so we've now just started doing a Wednesday morning class at 6:30 a.m., a yoga fusion class, where we're doing a lot of this stuff that I learned in the bar sequencing. And I want to talk about too a little bit about the anatomy. And the reason why we focus so much on the legs is because the legs are the root of Mulabandha. And one thing, everybody watching right now, your big toe, if you follow the inner thigh, pressing into the big toe, that's carrying that energy up the inner thigh into the crotch. And I already knew that, because as an Ashtanga teacher, Cindy would fire me. I can't go in my class and crotch check people to see if Mulabandha is engaged. I don't want to do that, but that would just be weird. They do it in India, and it's not weird in India, but in America, it would be weird. So how I can see a student's progress with understanding the shape, the alchemy of the shape, and the bandha, the potency, is I look at their feet. if their toes coming off the mat, I can see there's something is disengaged, and sometimes I'll go and I'll step on the person's foot, not like hard, but I'll push my foot on just to get their toe to press down so that they can activate into the inner thigh. Well, something that the bar classes do, that we do in the yoga fusion class that we don't get to do in yoga that often, I've never done it in yoga, is we come to the balls of our feet. We come to the balls of our feet and we bend our knees and we put a prop in between our thighs, like a ball or a block. And that forces that focused attention on the stability of the body, because the body's trying to always find that stability, right? To really get that energetic connection up through, of course, when you're holding that block as well. And so that's why these practices with the legs, even though they're only the root of Mulabandha, the root is where it all begins. It's where you have access to really understanding that pulling up of that pelvic floor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I've been refining my inner thighs too on a different level. I didn't realize how, you think you're connected to your legs or your bodies, but then you find something new or a new nuance, and then you realize I wasn't connected at all. But
perception.
Yeah. It's great that access to the inner thighs that we've been working on some inner thighs in this past week in our yoga class as well. And I've been, summoning and I think you have too, the great sage of the 1980s, Suzanne Summers, who was ahead of her time, and she understood
Thigh master.
The purpose of the inner thighs. She knew it. She was onto something.
Go find your thigh master, guys. Go find that thigh master. That is going to help you find Mulabandha real fast.
Exactly. But the positioning of your pelvis makes a difference in how well you can access your inner thighs, because if you have too much of a tilt, like an anterior tilt in your pelvis, it won't allow you to find the access and push through the inner thigh. So or if you have too much of that posterior where your hips are forwardly thrusting, but without any connection to your lower abdominals, that can also make you lose access to your inner thighs. So the positioning of your pelvis and how you're using your belly to position your pelvis can also help to give you that Mulabandha access, that rooting down, but then that also pulling up that gives you the access and the focus to your power. Now, all these little details, this is where we could totally nerd out.
Yeah.
But all these little nuances, all these little details make a difference, and it just goes to show you how much is stored within the body, how much unstored or not unstored, maybe unfulfilled potential is within the body, but how much potential we have access to if we do the work. To actually find it and to connect it.
It's all there. You just got to find it. I mean, it's literally you've been
right. Exactly. It's all there. You just got to find the right movement, the right alignment to get that.
That's the good news. You came here with all the tools. You just got it. And again, it's a lifelong practice. I actually work a lot, and I tell the students every Wednesday. I say this a lot, especially when we have new students. Like the practice we do on Wednesday morning can stand as its own practice, but my intention is to give them full on an hour's worth of practice into this area of their body so that they can then incorporate that into their yoga, into whatever else they're doing in their life. And we do a lot of those tucks, because you're right, it's that pelvis, it's being able to move. It's not just, and that's one thing I say a lot too, Cindy, like yoga is not about flexibility. Yoga is about mobility, which is that control. It's an openness with control. It's being able to open the hip, but also control the openness of the hip, being able to manipulate in a positive way.
Well, it gives you access. The important of the mobility work is it gives you access to more of your potential.
Yes.
Because if you're locked up, you just won't have access to it until you unlock yourself. So it's everything gives you access to deeper parts of you. And that's, the reason. And then when you do have access to more of your own potency and your own power, your own mobility, your own movement, your own strength, that it fuels you, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually as well, because you feel like you're in control, like you have some momentum, or you're like you're in control of your life instead of everything being just like seized and locked up and hidden
Yeah.
and protected.
Well, and that goes into the second chakra as well. We were going to say creativity, because like in Ashtanga, we don't listen to music. That's actually against the rules, right? Because they view in this lineage, they view that music can distract you from what you're doing, and it would just be kind of weird because it's on a certain beat. But in the class I teach on Wednesday, I rely on the music, because when you're in these positions and you're having to bounce up and down in a controlled way, I tell the students that I'm like, find the beat. Your body knows the beat. Find the beat. Find that natural primal instinct that comes from that second chakra, that creative, where you can move with the expression of what you're hearing as well. So it's incorporating the full simulation of you being alive in that moment. And I often tell them too, because strength work, I mean, that's what it is, guys. It's Wednesday morning we do a little bit of the stretching or the yoga, but I always say, listen, you're stretching all week in all the classes in yoga. Let's focus really hard on the strength in this class, to really help you find that crotch punch, so that when you go to do your handstands in yoga or your drop backs, you have more access to what it is you're actually looking for anyway. And yeah, I tell them though, because I always say, make this the hardest thing you got to do today, because in the rest of the day you're going to be great, right? Like, find the raw strength. And I tell them too that emotion, like sometimes when we dig deep into Mula Bandha and we're shaking, our muscles are shaking and we're dropping lower and we're squeezing the block and we're shaking, we feel that rage come up. And I tell the students, let it come up. Drop a few F-bombs if you have to. Find it. Find that area, that anger. Did someone piss you off this week? Did something piss you off as a child? Is that memory come up? Be there with it. But it's okay to have that rage. It's okay to find that human experience. You're not gonna, all you're doing is you're in a class. You're not gonna hurt anybody with it, but this is a healthy way of literally exercising. That's why exercise is the root word of exorcism, of exercising that which does not serve you anymore and strengthen that which does serve you. And the more you can ground into that, the more then you can have access to that's why the third and fourth pada are the third and fourth pada and not the first and second pada, right?
You have to
start with
you got to train it. You got to start. You have to understand the basics.
Yes, right. He didn't start with the siddhis, and actually, like in India, you get your Yoga Sutra book, and they're not hiding anything. It's there. It all comes together. The third and fourth chapter are there, but they always say, "Oh, wait 10 years, and then we'll look at the third." Like, do 10 years of first and second, and work first consistently. Then we'll talk about the third and fourth. You can read it, but I'm not going to teach it to you until you actually completed about 10 years of consistent practice. Well, that kind of, and then of course, as the solar plexus and the stomach gets stronger, because it's going to just naturally, that's going to strengthen the Manipura, your third chakra, which is like your willpower, and that brings that you stand. It's kind of like you stand up taller. You don't shrink down when you've got that secure. So the physical and the spiritual are literally one and the same when you're in this existence. They one cannot exist without the other. And so I wanted to kind of go through some of these questions. And now before we get, we've already talked about some of these questions beforehand, guys, but you guys know I talk a lot about how exercise and spirituality come hand in hand. And the first question was a great question. Now I want to make this clear before we get into it. When I talk about exercise and spirituality going hand in hand, I'm not saying you have to be an Olympic athlete. I'm not saying you have to train so hard that you're going to have a 12-pack, right? Take a walk. Start with just taking a 30-minute walk. Get your body, get your energy moving, because we have this concept, and I think this gets confused a lot in the Western world. It's called hatha, and a lot of people in America say hatha. It's not hatha, guys, because the th doesn't make the th sound in Sanskrit. It's hatha, which is like sun moon. So what is the sun? It's prana. What is the moon? It's anapana. So hatha is like juggling energy. It's basically, it comes from this book.
Can I say this real quick too? The hatha is interesting that you say sun and moon, because like in astrology words, the sun is spirit and the moon is matter. Oh, and wow. That's also what I feel what we're doing is we're talking about spiritualizing the body
It's the
it's
divine
the sun is
tango.
spirit. You're spiritualizing the matter. You're spiritualizing the body. You're bringing the sun and the moon, the spirit and matter into one form here. And that's what we're in the end trying to become. Anyways, go
No,
ahead.
I love that. I love that. It's the divine tango.
Mhm,
Well, so many people in the
mhm.
West get this hatha or hatha, as I say, thing confused. They'll say, I teach hatha yoga. That's person's vinyasa. And I'm like, no, no, no. Any type of movement, any type of movement is hatha. Going to run is hatha.
Mhm.
Going for a swim is hatha because it's just you. And if you really wanted a fun read, the Hatha Yoga Pradikapa. Now, it's only going to be interesting and fun to people who are nerds like Cindy and me, but it's actually there's some comical stuff in there. Like, for example, they tell you, and they still do this in India, that you should only wash your shala with cow dung. That's fun. And they talk about how your shala door, the door to your shala, your yoga school should be really low so that you have to duck to come in. I'd always read that, but I kind of skimmed over it. And I remember Lakshmi, my Sanskrit teacher, asking, like, do you guys know why that is? And no one said anything. And it was like, so you have to bow before God, like, duh.
Yeah. Like, duh. Yeah.
Duh.
You have to bow before you even enter.
Before you
Yeah.
enter. And none of the doors in India now are they're average size, but I thought that was interesting. But the Pradikapa, it's all about these yoga asanas or these yoga poses and like what they're doing. They also talk about how, because at this point when it was written, it was only males who practice, so you're not supposed to fraternize with women. That's in the Pradikapa. And also it tells you that vegetables are bad for you. So there's some maybe not correct. This is a 2,000-year-old book, guys. You should eat rice, like eat carbs, like so anyway, but that's where that comes from. So when we get to this idea of exercise being a part of spirituality, that's besides the bandhas which go into hatha, that's what I'm referring to. It's you understanding your life force, you being able to move in your body. It's a hatha. And so I also, that kind of leads us to the first question, but I do want to also say, just on a very practical level, again, I don't expect any of my students to be athletes. I don't expect them to, what their body is able to do, what they look like in their body is not what impresses me. What impresses me is their behavior and their character. Just going to put that. I've seen it all. Cindy's seen it all. I've seen, if you've seen one leg go behind someone's head, you've seen all, right? Like if you've seen one back bend, you've seen them all. Be a good person. That's what impresses me. And your hard work is what impresses me too, right? So with that being said, don't put added pressure on yourself when I say that. Just taking a 30-minute walk to begin with is really, really awesome and great. And it gets you sweating and get that energy. That sweat is that literal expression of that hatha, of that movement of energy. Second of all, don't ever compare somebody's chapter 10 to your chapter 1. So people like Cindy and myself have been doing this for years. So of course, you're going to see teachers who are going to look really fit in their clothes or haven't, they've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. And you want your teacher, trust me, you want your teacher to be a few steps ahead of you, right? That's how they're able to kind of guide you. And also, just to make it clear, Cindy, myself, other people, that classes you go to, this is what we do for a living too. So it's not just our hobby, but it's also what we do for a living. So there's going to be a different, you're going to see, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, that's what so it's going to be a different, you're going to see different expectations from different bodies. I also too, like for Cindy and me, we're adjusting students. So I want to bring that practicality into it too. Like when I used to teach Mysore, I would have to drop back men who are twice my size. So that level of fitness was also important to keep my body safe so that I didn't drop my student or hurt myself in the process of working with students. So don't ever compare yourself to the person who is teaching you or to anybody else in the room because you don't know what their backstory is. You only person you need to compare yourself is to you and what you're learning about yourself and the journey that you're on. I hope, does that make sense, Cindy? Because I get that a lot where people all of a sudden think they have to be like these marathon runner athletes. It's like, no. That's not what I said. Does that make sense? Like, just,
Yes, like you have to give yourself permission to be a beginner and give yourself permission to do crappy yoga.
Yeah,
at the
crappy
beginning.
yoga. Listen, I
Give
say this all the
yourself.
time. I love messy yoga. Listen, pretty yoga is boring. Like we gotta find
Yeah.
is this too pretty? Then I gotta do more work to make it harder for you to get sloppy again because that's where it's interesting. Where it's sloppy is where it's interesting.
Well, it's honest too.
Yes, it's
You
vulnerable.
know, it's like this is where I am. It's honest, and this is what it looks like, and that's what your teachers are there for. They're helping to try to get you through those beginner parts and starting to direct you where you want to go, and
Yeah.
like give you some direction. Say yes, this is where you are. It's beautiful. It's great, and be where you are, but then trying to give them the direction of where they want to go.
Yeah, and we also
Find
see
that
your
as well.
blind spots too. We can see because
Mhm.
I can see when somebody's ego or their imagination is taking over because it's happened to me. Like I can only recognize it
Oh
like
yeah.
you only recognize what's in your, so I know for me, when I'm doing my practice and I get to a part of my practice I don't particularly like, all of a sudden I need to go change the laundry. That's interesting, isn't it? Like all of a sudden at 4 o'clock in the morning, I got to go change the laundry. No, my mind's creating escape routes, right? My mind's creating that negotiation. And so because I've dealt with that and I still deal with that, Cindy, too, as a teacher, we're able to kind of recognize that in other people and help them stay on track, be the compass
Well,
for them to
because
be able to take the journey.
yeah, and especially, well, it happens. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an advanced student, but when the ego gets in the way, and then the ego gets embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ego might be embarrassed about, oh, I feel stupid here. I can hardly do this, or I'm panting and I'm losing my breath and I'm all flustered and everyone else is doing just fine. So our ego will come in and start to create the story about how you're not like enough, or you're not, or this is too much for me, or I shouldn't be here. But that's just the ego trying to come in and protect you from certain things. But part of the practice, especially as a beginner, is to get through that. Like you gotta get past that and get past your humiliation or whatever it is that you're feeling, and just give yourself permission to be a very sloppy beginner.
I will tell you guys, and I'm sure Cindy, you can vouch for this, as somebody who teaches and watches students all the time, everybody's in there struggling. So even if you
Oh
think
yeah.
that your classmates aren't struggling, they're struggling. Even
Mhm.
the advanced students, the ones that are hyper focused, those are usually the more advanced students who've been practicing for longer because they know how to focus the mind. But you can see it. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So don't ever feel like you're not. And I tell this to students too all the time. Everybody is so focused on their own shit, basically, they're not even paying
Mhm.
attention to anybody else in the room. I promise you they're not. So don't ever feel that way. And I believe, and my personal belief is you're always where you're supposed to be. So if you find yourself in
Mhm.
a class and you're struggling and that negotiation is happening, that mind chatter, that monkey mind is happening and you're beating yourself up, just remind yourself,
Mhm.
as my friend Tamara says, just be like, cancel, cancel. Thank you, but cancel, cancel. And remind yourself
Mhm.
that you're there for a reason. And nobody was born doing like, as far as like the athletic, we were all born being alive and having a body, but as far as being the athletic perspective of this, no one was born doing it. We all were big.
Mhm.
Everybody, every teacher, we all started at one point in our lives. So just get that silly talk out of your head. Get it out of your head. So this brings us to a really, really good question we got from one of our viewers. Let's go back here. She said, yes, I asked Tiffany, I said, hey, y'all, do you have any questions about Muladhara, Mulabandha, exercise, and spirituality? If so, ask below. Working on a video now. And so we got this question. Yes, I have a burning one. I hear you frequently say exercise is the foundation of spirituality. This leaves me wondering about people with disabilities or physical limitation that restrict their ability to exercise. How does this not exclude them from being spiritual, following a spiritual path? They can be some of the most enlightened people out there. I'm just trying to understand how both things can be true. Thank you for your excellent work and dedication to all of us watching. And I said, really good question and super easy to answer. We will discuss this in the video. So I want to kind of go back to this, what you said here with disabilities and physical limitations. So everybody everywhere has physical limitations. I have a really bad back. I've had back surgery. I have arthritis. We all have these limitations. And as I say a lot, we don't work against these, we work with them. And it depends on what the disability is. Like somebody asked, you had, my son has moderate cerebral palsy, and I'm determined to help him figure out a way to move. We and Carol, I answered this, we have a student at AYA who has cerebral palsy. And so let me just bring up this first, and then we'll get back to this question up here. I'll talk about the cerebral palsy first. I won't say his name, but we have this awesome student. We've had him at AYA for years now. He comes every single day, and he has cerebral palsy. And he came to AYA because he had trouble with other yoga teachers because they didn't know how to help him. And because Ashtanga is mostly is Mysore style, he was recommended to try Ashtanga because he would be able to go at his own pace, and the teacher would be able to, my boyfriend would be able to work with him one-on-one. Well, I have said since the beginning of this student coming to our shala, we have a lot of students at AYA who are practicing like advanced series A, third series, but in my opinion, the student in our shala who has cerebral palsy, who will never finish primary series, in my opinion, is the most advanced student at AYA. He comes into that shala every day. He's already got limitations. He's already got friction. And he comes in there with such a good attitude. And we've had to change the practice up a little bit. He has to work with props. When he comes to do his sun salutations, he has to, his one hand, which is not really working, he takes his other hand and pulls it up and then forward folds with it. So he works with his cerebral palsy. He doesn't work against it. And my boyfriend works with him. So for your son, I would say find a really good teacher or a trainer or someone who can work. There's a gym I follow on Instagram. I think it's over in the UK, where they specifically cater to people with disabilities, specifically. So you can find resources to, now again, with any disability or physical issue going on, once again, we're not asking you to be Olympic athletes at all. We're asking you just to move, just start moving, whatever that means for you. Now, let's say, and I'll let you give your perspective too, Cindy. Let's say that you're quadriplegic. Let's say something's happened and you are like paralyzed. Well, what we've talked about is the focused mind, right? So I have seen it happen before, and I have advised this before. Say you can't move your body doesn't mean you can't move your mind. Doesn't mean you can't lay there and go through a physical yoga, breathe yourself through in your mind's eye a yoga practice, or watch a ballet class and try to bring yourself into breathing through the movements that you're seeing on screen, and actually in your mind's eye see yourself, feel yourself doing those movements even if your physical body isn't moving. So there's always ways to work around it. There's always ways. And trust me, as teachers, I think, Cindy, we want to know. I want to know if you have an injury. I want to know if you have a bad knee. I want to know if you've got something going on. I need to know that so that I can help you help yourself and work with it, not against it. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Cindy?
Yes, well, I do work with like I have a client right now who lost the whole function of her left side of the brain. She's young. She had a stroke, and I see her. I knew her before that happened. But what we do is we just sit, and one of the things that we kind of talk about, or maybe I talk about because she can't talk right now, is you still woke up today. You woke up, you're breathing, and I know it's hard to figure out what the heck, why. We can get really caught up on the fact that we have this thing, but for some reason you still woke up today. You're still breathing, and there's still a purpose for you. I mean, there's still a purpose here for you to be here and to be alive, and to focus on, first of all, to focus on that purpose. So the people who have, and sure, that's easy for me to say, being fully functioned, because I don't know what that's like, but still, it's the things that when I'm having a hard day, is to redirect and focus your attention on the fact that I'm breathing, I'm here alive, I have still a specific purpose, whether it is to just, heal myself better, whether it is to wake up every day and try to get function and mobility back into my body, and what it's like to do that, and what it's like to go through that process. So I think for, that first part of it is kind of like you said, it's just like that mental, where is your mind, and what is it focusing on, and then some of the things that and she's not the only one that I've worked with disabilities, but it's just coming back to like, what can you do? So you have disabilities, you have physical limitations, but instead of focusing on what you can't do, what can you do?
Yeah.
And let's work on, what it is that you can do, and what is your goal? What is your purpose here for being with me, today? Like, what is it that you want? Do you want to get more mobility back, or, what is it? And then how can I help you, with that? But I think a lot of it is just focusing on what you can do, even if all you can do is, this with one arm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That,
or maybe this is all you can do right now, is turn your head from 100%. Side to side. And just come in as hard, like I said, I don't understand, I don't know that challenge from a personal experience, so I can't begin to comprehend what that's like. But, just that idea of, I'm still breathing, I'm alive today. Means I have purpose, and I have value, and how can I align myself with that and what I can do?
Yeah. And I'll say too, I've told this story before, but I think it bears repeating. Again, in the Ashtanga practice, you see a lot of, it's one of the most elaborate, you see crazy postures, Cirque du Soleil, it's very intense. And so you walk into a Mysore room a lot, especially if you're new, it can be quite intimidating, because you do see people standing up with their leg behind their head, doing forward and back handsprings. And I remember one of the greatest lessons I learned from David Grieg, and I repeat this a lot in the yoga class. There were two lessons that at Sacred Garden, I talk about this a lot. There's two great lessons I learned from David. But as I'd watched David, who's one of the foremost, most of the senior Ashtanga teachers in the United States, he would have these young girls in Philadelphia that were like in their early 20s, who had been cheerleaders or gymnasts, who had already had a lot of physical ability. And so they would kind of go through some of these asanas pretty quickly and get to more of the advanced asanas. And it never seemed, and this is my perspective, like David never seemed to be too totally interested. Like, it didn't really interest him that much. But, however, when a 60, 70-year-old man would walk in who was overweight and could hardly touch his toes, David would get so excited, because now, and I want you guys to remember this with your friends or your children or yourself, if you have a disability or a physical limitation or cerebral palsy, you have something to work with. You have something to actually work with. That's what David would say. These guys would come in, these old men who could hardly touch their toes. He'd be like, great, we have something to work with. Now we have resistance. Because that's what you're looking for, right? When you're looking for that friction, you're looking for resistance. Like, that's going to create that sweat. And so if and I've said this in our classes a lot, David would also say, if your karma, if you struggle in primary series, you are one of the lucky ones, because your karma came up early. And trust me, I've been in India where I've seen these people who've had to get all the way up to like 4th series, advanced series B, which I've said many times looks like a fucking exorcism. If you watch it, it's disgusting. But I've watched these people have such ease through 1st, 2nd, 3rd series, and they get to 4th series, and all of a sudden they hit struggle and their world explodes. Whereas people who found the struggle in the beginning are usually understand yoga from a deeper perspective, are humbler, are wise, really have a deep understanding of wisdom. So don't ever see disabilities or sicknesses or physical limitations. I like how Cindy said, what can you do, not what can't you do. Wake up and be like, yes, I have something to work with. I actually have, I'm one of the lucky ones in that sense. Like, I'm not saying, obviously I have a bad back and arthritis, but so I know what some pain is like in the practice, but, change your perspective. Change your perspective on what this is. You have something to work with, which is exciting. It's exciting. If you don't have anything to work with, then you have nowhere to go. But if you have something to work with, then you have so many possibilities in front of you. And so I would just really, I hope that makes sense. I would really encourage you guys to just, even if you're just a regular Joe, like Cindy and me, who, if you just like, are a little overweight, or have a, we have a lot of people with that issue, right? They're just a little overweight, a little chubby. Okay, we got something to work with. We got that belly to work with, right? And that's awesome. That's such a great place to be. So don't see physical limitations as actual limitations. See them as something to work with. I used to practice with a man who had a fake leg. He had his leg amputated when he was like in his 20s. So by the time I was practicing with him when he was like in his 50s, he had spent most of his life with it. So it was no big deal to him that he had a fake leg, right? Like, he's used to it. But I remember the first time David worked with him, David like walked in and was like, oh, he just got so excited because he'd never worked with someone before who was an amputee. And just the excitement to be able to, even though my friend worked really well with his amputated leg, but the fact that it was a metal leg on one side was exciting to David to be able to see we have different possibilities now, right? We have different possibilities because you don't have a physical leg for me to work with. Energetically, you still do. Energetically, what's this going to be like? So, okay, we have someone with cerebral palsy. We have different possibilities now, and that's exciting. There's still growth there. And so, again, you're not an Olympiad. You're not going to be auditioning for the Rockettes. It's not what we're doing. We're just trying to help you wake up that hatha, that upwards and that rising and lowering energy. Wake up that pelvic floor. Wake up that life force inside of you through any type of exercise. Does not have to be a marathon. So anyway, okay, we got this one too. This is great. Alicia, who comes to our classes on Zoom, which we'll talk about at the end. I have huge issues with my dad. Girl, same. He's passed on now, but those struggles are still there. And I also have major back issues. So finding the connection is something I'd love to learn more about. Cindy, I'm going to let you take this one away.
Well, your body holds it. You always say that your body is an Akashic record within itself, and it holds the memories of everything that you've experienced in this lifetime and all the lifetimes. It holds the genetic material of your ancestry, of your family. It's all coded there within your body. Your body responds to every thought that you're having. Like, every thought that you're having, every cell in your body responds to that thought. So the information is in the body. And if you're trying to figure out, okay, like, so I've had some daddy issues. I've had daddy issues too. And what your body basically tells you, especially if you're having like issues, is just might be saying, okay, well, maybe there's still some residual emotional stuff that's going on. And if it could be that there is a connection there. It could be that the back issues could be a totally different thing. So it kind of depends on what you're wanting to work on. You can go through the body and you can start to work with the back issues, for instance, and let what you receive inform your psychology. Because you can go, so your mind informs your body, but your body also informs your mind. So maybe just like deciding, okay, I'm just going to work on my back issues right now. I'm going to like work on them. I'm going to listen, just intuitively listen to what my body has to say. And eventually, if there is some kind of a connection there, it will come through just by simply doing the work and asking the question. And not putting your own interpretation into it, but letting your body inform you. And you never know what you're going to get. It could be a daddy issue. It could be something totally different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
And
love
your dad passing, that could be showing itself. I mean, I'm not saying that it could be a back issue, but it's tapping into that deeper intelligence, asking the right questions. And like, if you're going through the body, like working through what helps, what works, what feels right, listening to it. And oftentimes just by doing that, the connection will reveal itself to you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Ask it what it want. What is when your back hurts? Just say like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, what are you trying to communicate with me? I love that, and that's because it's your.
Because again, it's a redirection, right? Usually, if we have an injury or if we have something that's out of alignment, is telling you you need to redirect something. You need to redirect either your thought. You need to redirect. Maybe you need to redirect how you're holding yourself.
Yeah.
And if you think of your back issue as a redirection, and you're just saying, okay, how do I need to redirect myself here? Like, how do I need to redirect myself here? Then a lot of the answers will begin to come up. Not just again physically. Physically it will, but then you'll get clarity in other things as well too.
That's it's literal redirection because I have a bad back too, Alicia, and I punched a teacher coming out of a back bend. Like I really struggled with doing these back bends I'm good better at them now, but what really shifted for me it was that redirect. And I say this in the class all the time. I had a teacher say it's not back bending, it's stomach opening. And when I redirected the energy to the front of my body, the back of my body lost a lot of tension and was able to actually bend. And I was actually able to strengthen the front of my body, which is probably what the back of my body needed because the core isn't just your stomach, it's also your back. And so that is a literal redirect. And don't worry, girl, I think a lot of us have daddy issues. So, I think you're in good company. And I want to bring up something too that happens a lot. Sometimes when you start the path of spiritual healing, especially through yoga or an exercise program, a lot of times what's going to happen is like 3 months in, maybe it's different for different people. Sometimes 6 weeks in, an old injury will flare up. And a lot of people
Mhm.
make the mistake of like quitting at that time or thinking they need to rest. That's the worst thing you can do. Tell your teacher if it's flaring up, take modifications, but keep moving. Keep moving the energy because if you stop and you rest for a minute to let it just, it's going to get stagnant again, right? It's like that flowing water. So like if you have a knee issue, for example, and all of a sudden your knee issue flares up, if I have a student, they need to let me know that. So I'll tell them the modifications to do so that they're working again with the energy, not against, or with the injury, not against it, but we're keeping the energy moving. We're keeping it going. A rolling stone gathers no moss, right? We're keeping it flowing. And then eventually, hopefully it will end up they say that Guruji used to get really excited because, like, when one knee would get bad, he'd get so excited. He'd be like, okay, this knee, the next knee, and then going. Like, this knee's going to get bad, but it's going to get better. But then your other knee is going to get bad, but then it's going to go. It's all going to go. You're going to work through it. Another thing is the yoga fever. It's very, very common when you start a deep spiritual practice, especially involving exercise, after a few months in, maybe at night to have like a low grade fever. And then it'll be gone the next day. And that's what we call the yoga fever. And Guruji used to get really excited about this too, because it meant that old karma was burning, right? In order to create new patterns, old patterns need to be removed. And that would be it's like burning a compost pile, right? Now, of course, if your fever gets really high, you need to address it with a doctor or wherever, however you feel like you need to address it. But like low grade fevers are common in the beginning, and then they'll pass. They'll pass. Every time I start incorporating new postures into my practice, I'll still to this day will get a little low grade fever sometimes. It just means that your body's reforming itself. It's creating new patterns. Now, this one I already answered because I just said looking at the dosha system. I have an immune disorder that is undiagnosed. My body goes through frequent cycles of extreme exhaustion and digestive issues. My whole body will feel weak and I won't be able to do anything but sleep. It's not caused by depression and it's not psychosomatic. Actually, I will say everything is actually psychosomatic. That's kind of the spiritual perspective is like literally everything is psychosomatic. I thought I had Crohn's for a while, but my doctor is thinking has hematosis. I don't know what else to do or eat anymore. I'm low income. I said for digestion issues, literally everything is to an extent psychosomatic, because the mind creates the thought came first, right? The yoga chitta vritti nirodha, everything is reacting to thought. But I've done many videos on the doshas, and for my digestive issues, it literally was fixed with eating for my dosha. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Cindy?
There is, yeah. I mean, I also am into the thought that, you know, especially when you're dealing with something that's chronic, even though you might not think it's psychosomatic, but when I have issues, like for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm pretty sure that I have this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's familial something. So my body produces cholesterol. It produces excessive cholesterol. I mean, to the point that it could cause problems for me down the line with, you know, heart issues and strokes and stuff like that. And it's a genetic thing. And yes, and I could go about it and say, oh, well, it's just a genetic thing. And yes, I mean, it is a genetic thing. And it's something that I have to be mindful about. I have to watch certain things that I eat. I don't want to put an additional cholesterol to my body when my body's already producing too much. But what I did start asking myself is, what is it within my body? Why does my body feel the need to produce, like, why does my liver feel the need to produce an excessive amount of cholesterol? Because your body is not usually trying to work against you, even though it might feel like it. Body is actually trying to help you or support you. And some of the psychological analysis toward high cholesterol, especially if your body produces it, it's creating a blockage. Like you think, this is creating a blockage in my body. What is it trying to block? And in the case of cholesterol, a lot of it is it's blocking your ability to feel joy. And so I'm like, well, why is my body wanting to produce this inability to feel a whole lot of joy? Because that is kind of my life. I have a mindset that I've been working on where nothing is ever enough. Like, there's always got to, like, I get something, got it, next. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Like, I have this compulsion of, I always have to be doing more. And so I have that, which definitely blocks me from feeling joy. But where is that compulsion actually coming from? It's like, why? What is it that my body's trying to protect me from not having joy? It could be a survival mechanism. Maybe it has to do with being too complacent. And if you're too complacent, you die. You see what I mean? Yeah. So it's like when you get diagnosed with something that's chronic, one of the first things that or if I've seen a client, is ask, is like, why is my body producing this for me? And it is more, I could totally blame mine on genetics. Mine's just genetics, came from my dad. But, honestly, I feel like there's something deeper, something more to that for me to be able to do something about it. Because if you get caught up in the mindset of saying, oh, this is just it, this is what I have, period, it's very disempowering for me. Yeah. But if I can start to figure out things that I can do, so yeah, maybe feeling weak, feeling tired, feeling sleepy, what is it about disengaging from life, closing yourself off from life, disengaging from life, being sleepy? What is that trying to protect you from? And are you willing to allow more, like, get out of the mindset of, this is just what I am, this is who I am, this is just what it is, this is what the doctors have told me. I can't choose any differently. No matter what I do, I always feel sleepy. I mean, you can get caught up in that loop. Yeah. Believe me, I know. I've been caught up in those loops before. But is that loop really helping you? Is there something, anything that you can do to start to ask different? This is kind of like with Alicia. Can you start to ask different questions, approach it from a different point of view that you may have not considered before?
And I will say the digestion issues that, speaking of psychosomatic, because I agree, like in my perspective, literally everything is psychosomatic because the consciousness, it's like that whole idea, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, in spirituality,
Keep talking. I need to plug in my computer.
yeah, you're fine. In spirituality, consciousness came first. And so everything that's in your life is directed by your thought, by consciousness. And your body's not trying to punish you. I agree with Cindy. The body is trying to talk to you, is trying to show you. It's your template for where there is inaccurate understanding, you know, where there is no enlightenment, right? And we all have that. Every single one of us has this. That's why we're in a human experience, for that refinement. So the digestion issues, that is a fascinating psychosomatic rabbit hole to go down. We can't go down everything because we're already well over an hour now. But I would someone 9432, I would challenge you to look up what digestion issues mean spiritually. What is an immune disorder? Is your body literally attacking you? Why? What? Ask your stomach. What your stomach? You have people who struggle with depression also typically have digestion issues as well. So there's because there's just as many neurotransmitters in your stomach as there are in your brain. So if you're think about when you're nervous, you get butterflies. When you're excited, you get butterflies. Your stomach holds a lot of emotional information. And for me, a lot of mine went away with when I started eating for my dosha. But what happened, even though the food was changing and the energy of the food, what was also happening though is that I took my power back because I had been a slave to what my parents had given me to eat, what society told me I should eat. But when I said, oh, my body's telling me with these digestion issues that a raw apple isn't good for me because I'm a vata, when I realized that and I just stopped doing that and I started eating for what my body needed, I took my power back and my digestion got better. Also, what helps with digestion again is exercise. Okay, like look at, if you struggle with constipation, we listen, no one ever wants to hang out with yoga people because all we talk about is poops and periods. But if you watch marathon runners, a lot of times they shit their pants because they've jiggled their colon. And I'm not telling you to do that. Like, I don't want you to do that. But if you start to like move your body in that up and down, you start to simulate that movement of the getting the organs to move up and down, you're going to start to get the digestion fluids going again. It's like when we do inversions like downward dog or a headstand, you know, we're resting the organs because we're flipping them upside down and sometimes giving them that different, you know, flipping them upside down, even in just a downward dog, is going to give that simulation as well. So I look at that, and this is just my perspective as someone who's worked in this, been in this industry for 18 years, and I say, someone, look at your dosha, and also it's totally psychosomatic. So I wouldn't count that out. I think that's the greatest gift because now you can take your power back.
And again, it's the same thing. Just start with what you can do. At least that's what I feel. I mean, you know, if you're struggling with income and stuff, you know, and it's really easy. And I've been there before several times to just get caught up in the loop of feeling trapped. Like, oh my gosh, you know, I feel trapped. I feel like everything is kind of going against me, and it's a very yucky, uncomfortable feeling, and I know that feeling, and it sucks. But I also believe that there is always one solution that's available to you right now. So even if you have $1 in the bank account, your body is in this condition, it's a mess, and then your life might be falling apart. You know, there is always one solution, even if it's just a baby step, that is available to you right now at this very moment. There is one thing that you can do right now at this very moment that will help to take you to the next step, into the next step, into the next step. And so it's like doing that one little thing, whether it is, you know, going for a little walk, and it might be totally unrelated. It could be, you know, you have to clean out your closet, or
Yeah.
you know, make your bed every day, or there's something. I guarantee you, I promise you, there is one thing that is available to you that you can do right now that will lead you in the direction that you want to go. And so just listen and do that one thing, whatever that one thing is.
I would say too, when you're feeling exhausted and you want a nap, because that's a problem, I would say put your favorite music on and dance just by yourself and see what happens. See how that changes your perspective on life. Because, yeah, absolutely, 100%, Cindy. Well, this has been a really awesome episode. I want to take a moment, you guys. Make sure I'm going to put all Cindy's links in the description box below. Make sure you're subscribed to her YouTube channel. Now, Cindy, we at Sacred Garden, we have Zoom options. So we have Alicia. She's been Zooming in. So what days do you teach, Cindy? What times do you teach? This is all Eastern time, guys. So if you are coming from a different time zone, make sure you realize that we're in Eastern time. So just schedule yourself accordingly for your time zone. But what days and times do you teach, Cindy, at Sacred Garden? At your
Not every single one of my classes are available through Zoom, but the ones that are, I have a Monday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, and I have a Wednesday, 10 a.m. And I can't remember if my Saturday is late. No, I think those are the two classes that I have that are available through Zoom. Monday at 5:30 and Wednesdays at 10 a.m.
And mine
are right. I don't know. I have to look on my schedule.
But yeah,
you can also look on the schedule and see which ones are available. I just
live in the area. Just come.
One of my classes are available through Zoom, but not all of my classes are available through Zoom. Just a few of them. And then part of the reason is because some of the classes, they get really crowded, and the studio space is really small, and then the whole camera just gets completely blocked out.
Yeah. It's I will say, I'll tell for Alicia, who asked the question yesterday after we were finishing the class up. I watched the Zoom during the class, but at closing, I knew she was there, but she keeps herself, and then all of a sudden she unmuted herself and said something. I jumped. I was like, I thought it was a ghost. I laughed so hard because then all of a sudden she unmuted herself to say goodbye. And so I laughed so hard because all of a sudden the voice came out of the Zoom. But yes, my 6:30 a.m. Eastern time fusion class is available on Zoom, and the Ashtanga class on Sunday, not Wednesday, Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. But there's so many great teachers at Sacred Garden who have classes on Zoom, you guys. And so if this is something you're interested in, I'm going to put Sacred Garden's website in the description box below, so you can read all the class descriptions. And if you want to try a class, you can sign up for Zoom. I know for my 6:30 a.m. Wednesday class, if you sign up for that class, do it before Tuesday afternoon, because Cindy's the night owl, so she's not going to be available in the morning to send the Zoom link if you sign up. So make
do it the night before. Sign up for the class the night before, and I'll get you the Zoom link. But don't. 4:30 in the morning, I'm sleeping.
She's not going to be able to send you the link, so just make sure that if that ever does happen, we'll just put it towards the next class. But just make sure that you get that in before the evening comes. So there's so many great teachers at Sacred Garden that you can Zoom into. If you live in the area, please. We've gotten a lot of students through YouTube that now are coming a lot, and so that's awesome. So all are welcome. Everyone is welcome. There's so many different body shapes and sizes that are in Sacred Garden. You are totally welcome to come. We'd love to have you. You have a beginner course starting soon, or has it already started? The beginner series.
Yeah, it's already started, but you can probably join in because there's only one. It only went one session, and it goes all through the Sundays in April.
So if that's something you're interested, I'll also put Cindy's email if you've got any more questions about that. Now do you have any more courses coming up, Cindy, you want to advertise?
I'm in the middle of the Alchemist right now. The Shaman will start again in September. So if it's something that you want to think about, all that information is on the website too. So if you want deeper work about, it is very much deep spiritual work. And a lot of it is some of the things that we've talked about already, is like making that body mind connection, and then through cultivating relationships outside of you that really support you through all the woo-woo stuff. If you like the woo-woo stuff, this class is for you.
So,
but I always believe that the woo-woo stuff needs to inform your life, and it needs to improve and better your life. If it's woo-woo for the sake of woo-woo, it doesn't mean it's not meaningful to me. So no. I try to bring in that aspect, that how it can actually make your life better.
Yeah. Don't be a spiritual materialist. Don't just be woo-woo for the sake of having an image of being woo-woo. That drives me crazy. When you see these guys with, and I love a good man bun every now and again, but when you see the guys with the man bun and like 20 gazillion mullet beads, and they're like, dude, I'm like, shut up. You haven't meditated today. Shut up. Like you're wearing a costume. Shut up. So it has to be, it's supposed to enrich your life, not be your life. Right.
Yes.
So anyway, all right. Well, thank you, Cindy. That was a long one today. Thank you. And if you guys have any other questions and you want us to cover any other aspects, let us know in the description or in the comment section below. And of course, check out Sacred Garden. Come see me, come see Cindy, come see all of the other fabulous teachers at Sacred Garden Yoga. And or if you're on Zoom in. If you're in the area, join us. Listen, we rock out on Wednesday mornings. I'm telling you, like, I don't know what the neighbors think of us, but we've got that rap music playing. We got the light candles lit, and we're all having a grand old time on Wednesday morning. So please come join us if you get. All the cool kids are here on Wednesday morning. So anyway,
totally,
yeah. So all the cool kids are talking about Mulabunda and squeezing blocks. So all right. Well, I thank you guys so much. I hope that helped clear up any of your questions. Let us know if you have even more questions, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye, everybody.